Hello, mate. Welcome back to Fresh Rubber. How you going?
Yeah, I'm good, mate. So much to keep up with this last few days. How are you feeling about it all?
I'm feeling a bit of whiplash, if I'm honest with you, Gav, because we've gone from 2 or 3 months of anticipation, waiting, the build-up, and all the unknown factors of the new season kicking off. And then it's here, and it is all of the F1 all at once. How are you feeling when F1's just put on everything and more in such a short space of time?
Yeah, I mean, it's just electricity to the nervous system, isn't it? Going from Albert Park straight into a Chinese sprint race with cars that we just don't know what they're going to do we? And I just feel like even though we're 2 races in, all expectations continue to get blown out of the water. Kind of favourites continue to slip around the top order. Surprises happen. The cars are still not really fully working. It's fascinating. My first observation was kind of, isn't it nuts how similar the Albert Park was, Melbourne was, the start of the race to the sprint. Like in the first kind of 10 laps with this kind of push and pull between Mercedes and Ferrari. These two teams who are clearly showing at this early stage that they are the ones to keep a close eye on as title contenders, as teams and as drivers. But how it just felt like, are we doing this again? Are we doing this bit where Ferrari shoot off at the beginning and then, slowly the reliable, larger turbo-equipped Mercedes just kind of eventually hunts them down? I don't know if my hopes and dreams of seeing Lewis up there again can take much more of this battering, because I allowed myself stupidly to get really excited when Hamilton pulled into P1 on lap 1 of the sprint. I'm like, oh my gosh, if he can just pull ahead, if he can just create a bit of space, a bit of clean air. We're so used to this word clean air in the ground effect cars, weren't we? Like if you could get clean air, then you could get ahead. Turns out that's not the case for poor old Ferrari.
Well, I guess they got nerfed a little bit by one of those Mario Kart dynamics. I don't know if you remember Mario Kart. There's a thing in that game where if you get too far ahead, it actually slows you down, and the cars that are too far behind get sort of sped up. There's this dynamic in the game where they want the racing to be kind of close. I think maybe some of that's bled into F1. But I think also it's the hope that gets you in the end. If you live without hope, then you can't be disappointed.
Well, dude.
But for us diehard Hamilton fans, it's too much. It's too much. And I ask you, Gav, what's worse?
I can taste it. It's on the. It's
what
like.
Do you think is worse? Having the pain of last year, where he was so mopey, or having the excitement and potential of this year where the car is clearly almost good enough and he's back in the game, and yet it's sort of not close enough? Like, what's worse? What's worse for you?
100% upbeat Lewis, fighting for it, showing us. I mean, my gosh, that overtake that he did on turn 8. For those who haven't watched it or don't know turn 8 on this particular track in Shanghai, it's a very unorthodox place to overtake, and there's nothing more thrilling in F1 than seeing someone do an unorthodox overtake. George didn't see it coming, I don't think, and it just shows us that despite being over 40, despite being towards the end of his career, his racecraft is still there if given the right equipment, and he's there to teach. He's there to teach the young kids how to do it again. I think. Do you know what, the thing that I've been kind of delving into and doing a bit of kind of light research into recently is why Ferrari are so quick off the line and why they can't necessarily maintain it in race pace.
Go for it. I'd love to know more.
Well, this is my pseudo technical appraisal of the situation, but it's essentially that Ferrari have decided to go for this kind of little micro turbo, like much smaller than the larger turbos that other teams are using. So it has this kind of spooling effect, which allows them to be much faster in restarts, much faster off the line, faster coming out of slow corners and low speed sections. So it's giving
There's less lag for them. They've got the lag issues, not so much for them.
Power is like immediate. It's less complicated. It's cleaner. The delivery's cleaner. So this thing that we're seeing, this phenomenon where they are just like flying off the line and doing really well at restarts. It's to do with this smaller turbo. However,
Fascinating.
in the straight line speed, and when you're really motoring, the larger turbo is coming back, and that's what I think is a big part of what we're seeing. So it's working for them. It's getting them position, but then they can't maintain it, and they're also incredible. I think they're incredibly hard on their tires. Mercedes really have a car that is, and we know how important tire wear is. Mercedes seem to have a car that leans less heavily on those tires.
And I wonder if maybe temperature, sort of ambient track temperature, is going to play a factor here as well.
Right.
I know in the past, Mercedes has had a tendency to perform better at colder tracks rather than hotter tracks.
Right.
So maybe there's an element there where some circuit configurations and temperature conditions might favor the Ferraris over the Mercedes, but they might have to get into that sweet spot.
And it was
Wow.
cold.
Hey-
It was cold in Shanghai, right? It was like 10,
Yes,
10 or 11
yes.
degrees, was it? Or
And windy, according to Lewis, in qualifying. So fascinating. Gav, thank you for doing the legwork. I had no idea that was why. But can I say, I think it's a little bit comical that F1 now has to have this blue pre-start spool up your turbos procedure. That to me is like that's a smell. That's a smell that's not good. That they can't just get to the grid and have the 5 lights. They've got to have this little cute little blue, like I've got my blue light here. Are you ready to go? Warm up procedure. I think that's kind of comical.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan. And I think maybe, let me test this on you, Gav. The overtake button to me seems a little bit like a dopamine button. And I think it's not necessary, but I think it's here to stay, and it might even get used more often because of the exciting racing that it opens up as a potential at the start. But to me, it seems fully unnecessary, but I don't see it going away anytime soon. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I totally agree. It's not going away anytime soon. I Look, I feel really conflicted. I'm loving it. I know there's a lot of haters out there. You can't go on the internet without finding normally some guy in his 50s going, "This isn't racing at all. I can't even stand to look at the onboards anymore. I just turn it off." You got that crew, and then
Back in my day.
yeah. I don't know. Like, what I would love to see is it not just be exciting for the first kind of 6 or 7 laps. I'd love to see it. And I think that will come as upgrades come and cars become more competitive. We've talked a little bit about the fact that McLaren are clearly the third fastest team on the grid. I mean, Lando did very well, P4, nothing to be sniffed at. How far? He was 4.5 seconds behind. What was encouraging, and you could argue this was because of the safety car in the sprint, but Charles in P2 was only 7 tenths behind Mercedes. Like I said, maybe that's just because they all bunched up for the safety car again. Maybe had the race carried on, it would have been 3 or 4 seconds again. But I don't know. It feels like, come on, Ferrari. We need you to be competitive. We can't look at George's smug face all year. We can't have it. We won't have it. I'm not saying I don't want him to win. Maybe it's his time. I'll be happy for him if he wins. But he can't just walk away with it. He can't just be in the car going, "Oh, I love this car. I love this engine, Toto." Oh, he can't be allowed to do that all year, because I will probably end myself at some point. You'll just come in, I'll just involuntarily have just combusted in my little seat.
Oh my god. Okay, well, let's save you from that outcome.
Come on, Ferrari.
One thing I'm conscious of as a Hamilton fan, I have a history of kind of disliking George Russell, and then as a not cringe fan, I guess I have a history from last season of just not really vibing with him. But he is still doing the things. And when you look at the result he got in qualifying, in Q3 his car just did not start. It stopped on track, and he had all these flashing lights, and he had to deal with that as a bit of chaos.
Kept it cool.
And can you imagine the mindset that you need to get yourself back into
Unbelievable.
to be able to qualify well. And it reminds me a little bit of Antonelli in Australia, how he came out after crashing in FP3
Yep.
and was able to put it so high. So the Mercedes drivers seem to be very resilient to hardship at the moment, even if it's hardship of their own making. But to go through all that, and he had issues in the second part of qualifying when his wing wasn't working, and he still came out and put it P2. So I think that's a huge thing for them. And I think even though I don't necessarily like George Russell and his cringe factor, he's still getting the results. He's still doing the thing. And this is an era that we're going into where the cars are incredibly complex. So you got to give that some credit at least as well. Like, wouldn't you agree?
I totally agree. And I think what you're seeing there is two very competent drivers, one very experienced in George and one still very much learning the ropes, as we found out in the sprint when Antonelli locked up and went into the side of Hadjar. Because it would have been a George Antonelli 1-2, wouldn't it, had that not happened?
Yeah.
But what you're seeing, I think, are two drivers who are very confident in the machinery underneath them and very confident in their team. And I think that it can't be understated how much, we saw it with Lewis and we've seen it with Leclerc and we've seen it with different teams. When they're not confident in their team, the strategy, the pit wall and the machinery underneath them, it really gets in their head. But I think those boys, Antonelli and George know they've got something solid around them and something solid underneath them.
Yeah, 100%. And Kimi Antonelli, youngest ever F1 pole sitter.
Unbelievable.
That's incredible. He took the record away from Sebastian Vettel.
That's right.
And let's just hope he figures out how to start the race.
Yeah.
Because we've had Australia and the sprint race here in China where he's absolutely fumbled the start. And that's partly why he was going into the side of Hadjar at the start of the sprint race, because his start was so poor. In both cases, he dropped back to 6 or 7 on the first lap. So let's hope that Kimi Antonelli can sort through those little gremlins
What is it?
and get that stuff done.
What is that though, Jace? Is that something that's within his control? Because also Max and Kimi didn't get any boost at the beginning. So I think poor old Max, can't believe I'm saying poor old Max, dropped down to 14th or 15th, I think, in the first or second lap of this sprint. Managed to claw it vaguely back to 9th. But is this something that's...
He just wants that last to first challenge every weekend. He's just addicted to the sporting. Yeah, I think it's, from what I gather, even in the previous iterations, if you ever get a chance, Gav, have a listen to the onboards throughout a session.
Yeah.
Because the engineering side of things, there's performance engineering, which is where they're thinking about how to get the best out of the car. Then there's the strategy people who think about how to sort of make decisions. And then there's the race engineer who's talking to the driver all the time. So it's sort of 3 decision-making supports for the driver. And they're constantly feeding to the driver to switch to, state of charge mode 2 and enter into this thing, lift off a bit more when you enter into turn 5. They're giving them feedback all the time. And so there's this real mind meld that needs to happen. And ultimately the hands on the paddle and the feet on the pedals that need to actually come alive. So I think it's partly in Kimi's control. It's partly in the engineering of the thing that he's driving. And it's partly in the kind of information flow coming from the pit wall. For example, when they come to the grid, they always do a certain number of burnouts. This is a part of F1. When you go to the grid, you see them before they get to the spot where they stop. They're always doing the little burnouts. That's not just because they're rev heads and they love burning out. They actually are instructed to do 3 burnouts on their way to the grid. It's like part of the race start procedure. So I think it's all wrapped up in that. Clearly George has got it nailed. Kimi doesn't. So he's got to work on that. I'm hopeful that he can figure it out before this afternoon or, very soon after. Because if he doesn't, then he's going to be stuck in these stupid battling against P5, P6 against the Red Bull when he really should be up there basically keeping George honest. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's going to be such a fun race, and we'll talk about today's race. We'll hopefully catch up tomorrow night and drop another podcast. But I'm also really interested this year at actually, given it's looking pretty straightforward at the front. We've got a dominant Mercedes, a Ferrari on the hunt, and in the shadows McLaren that might come through. I'm really interested in some of the races, the kind of the relationships and the partnerships kind of down the line. We've got Ollie Behrman, who seems to be out driving Ocon at the moment. We've got Carlos Sainz and Albon. Sainz seems to have a little bit of an edge at the moment. Gasly looking absolute fire. Like imagine if I mean, I've wanted Gasly. Let's just pause on Gasly. I've wanted him to do well for so long, and he's just not had the car to do it. But he's beginning to show these. I mean, what did he qualify yesterday, mate? Is it sixth or
Seventh?
Seventh, like
Best of the rest.
this is Alpine. This is the tractor. Something is
Not
something
anymore.
is not anymore. Something's working.
But clearly they invested in 2025 in the current car. Because
Yeah.
they finished last year, and they must have just given up at the
Given
end
up.
of round one.
Yeah.
So they made that. It seems like that was the right decision, because getting out of P10 in the constructors and finishing P9, that's not much of a benefit. But they've clearly come out of the blocks swinging when it comes to this year. And whilst we look at Gasly, and I share your feelings on Gasly, I think he's a vastly underrated driver and he can do great things. I actually have the opposite with Colapinto. I kind of have the view that he shouldn't be in F1. I don't think he's got the right stuff to be in F1. Maybe that's too harsh. You might put it differently, but I don't think I've seen anything from Colapinto that convinces me that he's the right second driver for the Alpine car. The only thing that keeps him there, in my view anyway, is that they don't have a better third option, which I think is quite damning. So they may want to think about how they can address that situation
Well, I
going
think
forward.
they could take Lewis next year. Can you imagine Lewis in an Alpine? Can you imagine?
No,
Can you?
I cannot.
I know you can't. No, none of us can. Um,
Oh,
but
yeah.
yeah, interesting tyre strategies as well in the sprint. Lawson, who started on the hard, so Lawson, Sainz, and Alonso all started on the hard. Really served Lawson well starting on that hard, didn't it?
Yep.
Didn't need to come in under the virtual safety car, and got himself up to P7. Mate, like great result.
As far as strategy calls go, that was
Solid.
solid.
Yeah.
Yep. The opposite could be said for Hadjar, who started on the soft and he did come in for a pit stop, ended up finishing 15th. So that gamble didn't quite work out. But speaking about Hadjar and Red Bull for a moment, isn't it cool to see how close they are in qualifying?
Unbelievable.
Max and Hadjar,
Yeah.
neck and neck. That's what Red Bull's needed for years. They've
years.
always had this one dominant driver with the second tier who kind of could be replaced at any point. But Hadjar's bringing the goods. This is exciting stuff,
Bringing
man.
the goods.
He's bringing the
It's
goods.
a shame the car's not very good.
Oh man,
Oh,
have you
dear.
ever seen Verstappen struggle so much
Never.
with a car? Not once. Not even when he's been driving a shopping trolley, as we talked about last episode. But I've seen him drive GT class cars. I've seen him drive a whole bunch of other different machinery in outside of F1, and he just loves it. This is like possibly the worst car that I've ever seen him drive, and he's got to keep his head up. I'm sure he will, but this is, I think, the mindset game for now is key. It's early doors. We're just getting the season started. There's plenty of development to come, but he needs to not do a Hamilton and drop his head and just give up or get frustrated. And same with Norris. Imagine dropping from P1 in the championship last year down to sort of kind of being third best car and struggling against the likes of Gasly. And you think, oh, okay, that could be quite frustrating. They just need to keep the mindset of sort of positivity, learning, growth, adaptation to the circumstances, because it's far from done. We've still got many races to come, but they're really struggling at Red Bull at the moment. He said
really
that every part of the car is horrible. Is that what he said?
He didn't say that. He said in the press yesterday that every single lap feels like pure survival. Like you're hanging onto the car. It's desperate times. I think the balance of the car is just all over the place. I think the rear end is super tricky. Yeah, I think they're in trouble. I don't think they're in trouble like Aston Martin are in trouble, but they're in their own kind of trouble. They're in a kind of trouble where you're Red Bull. you're Max Verstappen, arguably the greatest racer of his generation, maybe one of the greatest of all time. And it just goes to show that this sport that we love, F1, is half driver, half machinery. We always talk about it. On one level, it's unfair. On another level, it's deeply fair because, if Max always had the best car, then he would probably always win. And we saw, like you said, Lewis go through his 40 years in the desert. Um, it's part. You have to do it. You have to do it, and it's part of the game, unfortunately. So yeah, tough times for. My fear is, I actually genuinely have a bit of a fear that Max will, if they don't get on top of the car, he might walk away. Um, he kind of hints at it. He hints that he's very happy to, on and off. I hope that there's just something in him that wants to almost like kind of eat the pain and indulge in the difficulty and just prove how great he is. I hope that.
I sort of don't mind if he does walk away because he doesn't walk away having lost anything. He is a four-time world champion. And if he does walk away, it gives him the opportunity to go set up or to take his actual racing team, which he runs on the side, and go race at Le Mans. Go
Yeah.
and compete in other series that he clearly is interested in doing. Go race at Bathurst. Go take up the Indy 500. Go and conquer the other domains that you are aware of, but you have never actually uh, planted a flag in. I think that would be an amazing kind of sporting racing story if he just went off and conquered other worlds and then came back to share the glory. Oh, that'd be cool. The early days of motorsport, mid 20th century, the drivers actually drove in multiple series. They kind of swapped around. You might be driving in F2, then F1, then go off and drive in some other sports car racing class. That was like the birth of the sport, 50s and 60s, and we just don't see that anymore. Drivers tend to specialize in one thing and they become, mega successful. But there's something about Max that kind of harkens back to those days where times were different and you could hop out of one car and hop into another and win. And I for one, I love it. I think there's something unique about Max in it. I don't think most other drivers could do it. And there's something special about him that I'd love to see him actually get out and do it and
It
not
is
just sort of sit
cool.
in F1 complaining all the time.
Like, I'm not into any other form of motorsport other than F1, so my knowledge is very limited. But if you do begin to think about it, you've got NASCAR, you've got Le Mans, the endurance races. Um, there are so many formats within racing. I don't think any of them capture the glory of F1 for a bunch of different reasons. But do you know what? If I could choose one thing that Max went and did, it'd be go and become World Rally Car Driving Championship. To be like a rally, like kind of a proper rally car racer, and just kind of drifting and on dirt tracks and stuff. I wonder what he'd be like at that. I'd love to see if there's any world in which he could kind of take the champ. But if Max goes and does one of those things, he'll want to win it, won't he? He'll want to absolutely dominate, and I would be so stoked to see him go and dominate an alien form of motorsport. You getting it?
I,
You getting beeps?
I'm just getting a phone call from my wife. I don't know why.
Okay,
Let's wrap it up.
let's wrap it
This
up.
is this has been fun. I really dig the mid-weekend touching base before the race. It's so exciting. I'm hopeful that Antonelli can get off the line well and do it properly and not be in P7 at the end of lap one. What are you looking for the race tonight,
All I
Gav?
all I want is I just want to see them set that Ferrari up to give Hamilton, starting from P3, a chance to boost past them both, get some clean air, and stay ahead. That would be It would be so glorious. I'm not expecting it. It's pure hopium, pure copium. But to see, but and even if not, just to see him on the podium would be fantastic. And for Leclerc not to qualify behind him and then get past him in the race. That was
Mm.
frustrating about the sprint. It's just like, can Lewis qualify ahead of Leclerc? Yes. Is he as quick as Leclerc this year? Definitely. Can he now just please win a race or like finish ahead of his teammate? That's my hope. And I'd like to see
So
Lando in that. I want to look. I told you, Jace, this year I was going to have no favourites because it was too painful. Too painful holding on all year for my boy Lando to win. So now this year...
Have you shed that? Have you shed that belief, or are you staying with it?
No, even with Hamilton. I'd love to see Hamilton do well, but I am not going into the hopium and the copium of it. I'm just going to enjoy the season. But I'd love to see Lando hustle. I'd love to see McLaren bring some upgrades. So, yeah, let's see. What about you, mate?
The 3H triangle for Ferrari. There's the hopium, the hypium, and finally the helpium that you get into.
I didn't know that, but that sounds very reasonable.
Helpium is in the season and they need a lot of help. Yeah, look, I think the racing, that back straight, actually with the super clipping, not as lame as I was expecting it to be. No. Not as bad as it was seemingly in Australia. So I'm hopeful that we get a good race without too many safety car interruptions, because I hope that the teams can figure out their performance and reliability, and we don't end up with a race that's determined or very deeply influenced by engines going pop and drivers sort of getting off to the side of the road. Yeah, I also hope that Antonelli can clear off and show George Russell how it's done.
I'd love that so much.
Wipe the smile off his face, maybe, but no, that's okay.
He's a humble dude. He's such a humble dude.
And he's 18.
He's so 18. Humble. He's like, okay, that's cool. Cheers, guys. Like, he's so humble. It feels genuine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. Oh, mate, bring it on. This race is going to be exciting. And then we've got another one. Is it next week? The Japanese.
We've got another one next week. Got the Japanese straight away.
Oh,
and then we probably don't have our two Middle Eastern ones, sadly. We're going to have to go back to a little... Let's see how it plays out. But I'm expecting an announcement, as are many, I think, today probably, about that. We'll see if by the time we meet up tomorrow to talk about the main race, whether we have any news on the two Middle Eastern destinations because of all the terrible things going on in the world. But for now, we focus on Shanghai. We are stoked. We're excited. We want to see fresh rubber burnt all over that track. I will chat to you tomorrow.
Can't wait, mate. Bye.